Hi, everybody. If you know our Birthing Better channel, you know that over the years I've done over 1,000 videos about the same topic. And here I am at 80 years old doing it again. So these series are going to be about tips and trends of childbirth in 2025. Now, there are going to be a lot of other tips and trends videos that are being made and advertising. So we focus on one thing and one thing alone. And that is, what is the childbirth concept of the day in which you, as a pregnant woman, are going to give birth? So in reality, I gave birth in 1970 in the United States and then in 1982. And the social message around childbirth in the 70s was different than it was in the 1982s. 1982. In the 1970s, it was at the end of the skills-based childbirth trend or concept. We all went to Lamaze classes in the hospital or attended Bradley classes in instructors' homes. We all learned skills because in the United States we lacked choices. And that wasn't true in other countries. But these birthing better skills that were developed by hundreds and hundreds of families, most of them very religious or alternative, from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we were mostly working in a medical maternity system where until the 1980s we lacked choices. So we took skills into our births, multiple millions of us. We all attended Lamaze classes. They were the first ever childbirth preparation classes taught anywhere in the world. And we just loved learning to do something because the second global childbirth goal is around the word suffering. We've all heard women suffer in childbirth. For the Christian families I worked with, that was a biblical pronunciation. Women suffer in childbirth. Women don't want to suffer in childbirth. And we demanded that our husbands were with us. And they don't want to see us suffer. And we want them to help us. We don't want them to sit around and do nothing. We want them to have skills to help us. And what are the skills for? Well, the natural birth movement, there was just a fledgling movement in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, wanted no medical care around birth. They believed that low-risk women should be able to have a natural birth, a pain-free labor without medical care. And everybody in the United States was being pulled in the medical community. You can understand that issue. Why? But that was the reality. And midwives had been outlawed since the 50s. But when we brought skills in, we weren't dealing with the goals of the natural birth movement. We were 100% of pregnant women giving birth. And giving birth was always an activity we had to do. And every human activity is best done with skills. And that's why hundreds of families and I developed the Birthing Better skills. We refined the skills. We made them broader. We made them deeper. We made them more adjustable, adaptable, and sustainable for all births. It didn't matter whether we were high risk or low risk. And what the obstetrical nurses and the obstetricians saw from the 50s to the 70s was skilled families working together. And from that, they relaxed their standards of care and permitted us more choices. But then in the 1980s, the natural birth movement had grown globally, and they didn't see that women using skills had achieved those three goals: natural birth, pain-free labor without medical care. So they just went, skills don't work to achieve those goals, but we just need choices. Women know what kind of birth they want. We should write it in a birth plan. Our care providers should give us that birth. And the reality is, very few women in the world have choices, and choices often change. And 99.99% of the women will tell you after the birth, it wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. So you can't really choose the birth you have, even though you may know the birth you want. But it's always an activity. And sadly, in the 1980s, skills were actively dismissed by the natural birth movement and famous authors. Cows and cats aren't taught to birth. Women don't need to. Women have always birthed. They instinctively know how to do it. That's not accurate. Just because something happens to you doesn't mean you know how to do it. Think about sex. How good were you the first time that you had sex? If you were sensible, you learned some skills. If you have children, how innate is it that children know what's safe to put in their mouth? It's not. We spend years taking things out of our kids' mouths. If you asked a child to cook a meal, they couldn't. You have to learn how. You learn skills. And we can learn skills to do the activity of birthing our baby. That's what the Birthing Better skills are about. That's what Lamaze Bradley was about. Hypnobirthing, birthing within, calm birth. It's all about using skills around giving birth. But Birthing Better skills are for all births, whether a cesarean or whether a labor, whether there's medical care or no medical care. It's an activity each woman is doing with her baby. And the reality is, we want the person with us to be skilled. So we have to learn skills together. And that's important because when a family learns skills together and they prepare in pregnancy and work together during the birth, they feel more settled and confident to work together with their newborn. That's what we call the continuity of skilled self. In other words, we're all skilled before we get pregnant, and now we fall into that black hole of pregnancy. Women have to cope 24/7 with being pregnant, and their partner or other is around all of those changes. And it's a very challenging time. And without skills, we're spit into parenting, assuming that we can just pick up as competent, skilled people. And families struggle, and we don't need to. And because I've lived long enough, my generation felt really good about their births, even though there was a lot of medical attention. We didn't always have good births, but we birthed better. When it moved into choices and fathers were dismissed as birth coaches, our families were more alienated, and the rise of tabs was exponential. Exponential. Very few women in my generation had a tab story, trauma after birth syndrome. But boy, it exploded once women didn't get the births that they wanted and lacked skills to do the birth that they had. So, what we want to say to you today, and I am the voice of those hundreds and hundreds of families, very religious and very alternative, who knew their baby's birth was important to them. And they wanted to have skills to work through the activity of birthing their baby in all circumstances. I'm their voice now. And I never had any interest in childbirth. We just knew that the skills we were developing, and the first of our skills was the pink kit that came out in 2000, which was just the body skills. We knew how important they were. We knew that this is an activity that does not repeat itself. It's few and far between in our lifetimes. The birth memories and the birth stories that we have last a lifetime. And when we do not have a good birth, we are impacted personally, and our families are impacted by that. So, what do we want you to do? We want you to spread the message that we need to grow a self-learning, skilled birthing population. It's wonderful for the privileged few that have choices, but many of those choices don't unfold the way those privileged few even want. And the majority of women around the world lack choices around childbirth. Yet 100% of them are going to give birth one way or another. And it's an activity. And we can fill that activity with wonderful, wonderful birth and birth coaching skills. And we can precede our birth by learning how to prepare our birthing body to let out this very big object. We can do that. That's what Birthing Better families developed. How to create space and mobility inside our body, how to really prepare the birth canal, and how to work together effectively. So I'm going to continue to do these live streams about the tips and trends in 2025, but you have a job, and your job is to recognize that the skills-based childbirth trend in the United States in the 50s and the 70s needed to include choices where women did have them. And that the choice-based trend that dismissed skills as cows and cats aren't taught, women don't need to be taught, that's nonsense because we have to do the activity of birthing our baby. So now we have to bring skills to the forefront as primary, and we welcome people who have choices. That's wonderful. And to recognize that most women around the world lack choices, but are still going to do the activity. And we want fathers or others to be skilled with us. Now, why? Do we want fathers and others to be skilled so that we achieve a natural birth, pain free labor without medical care? No. We want fathers to help us for the primary reason, which is dealing with the second global childbirth goal, which is suffering. We don't want to suffer in childbirth. We want to stay engaged. We want to cope, manage, deal with, handle, work through, feel in control, and stay on top of it no matter what is happening to or around us. And we achieve that when we all birth better. And we all birth better when we have a reasonable set of skills that will help us do that. So join us, spread the word, tell your friends and family, have them look at the different skills based methods available today. There are more than there were in 1970. And from 1970, and as Lamaze and Bradley and Grantley Dick Reed's methods were being put to rest by being replaced by choices, for 20 years, the only skills based method that was still developing was our birthing better, because we knew choices were fickle and most of us didn't have them. Do you think a lot of high risk women have a lot of choices? More so now than they did back then. Do you think women around the world in Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia or other countries around the world have choices around childbirth? No, but they're going to all do the activity of birthing their baby. So spread the word, start to research what skills based methods are available for you or for others that you know and love, and tell everybody now is the time to grow a self learning, skilled birthing population for absolutely all births, with fathers and others being skilled to help us learn how to cope, manage, work through, deal with, handle, stay on top of, and feel in control. Skills help us birth better, and our birth memories last a lifetime.